Welcome back, everyone, to another deep dive. You ready to jump into something interesting today?
Always ready to dive in. What are we looking at this time?
This time, it's something a lot of folks are thinking about as they get closer to retirement. Gold IRAs.
Yeah. Those have been getting a lot of attention lately.
Exactly. And there's a lot to unpack, so we're going to be taking a deep dive into some info from, well, it's called Gold IRA Blueprint.
Makes sense.
So we'll be pulling out this key points, the things you really need to know if you're even considering this for your own retirement.
Sounds good. Let's break it down.
Awesome. So to kick things off, we're talking about gold IRAs, which are different from the usual IRAs most people are familiar with.
Right. You're not dealing with stocks and bonds here. It's actual physical gold.
Yeah, exactly. Like holding a piece of history in your hand. It's kind of cool. But we'll get into that more later.
Definitely.
First things first, if you're serious about learning more about gold IRAs, Gold IRA Blueprint actually has this free checklist you can grab.
Oh, that's handy.
Yeah, it's all about choosing the right gold IRA company. And you can find it at goldirablueprint.com/exclusive.
So that's goldirablueprint.com/exclusive.
Exactly. Bookmark that. We'll mention it again later.
Got it.
Okay, so getting into the meat of it, Gold IRA Blueprint lays out some pretty compelling advantages to these things.
Like what?
Well, for starters, tax benefits.
Always a plus.
Right. And then there's the whole hedge against inflation thing.
Yeah. Gold tends to do well when the market is kind of shaky.
Yeah, exactly. And then there's this psychological factor, too. Knowing you've got tangible assets. It's not just numbers on a screen.
Yeah, I can see that. It's like a security blanket, but made of gold.
Exactly. That's a great way to put it. But you hit on something important there. It's not just about the practical stuff like taxes and inflation. There's this whole psychological element to gold.
Definitely. Historically, gold has always been seen as valuable. Like, no matter what happens in the world, gold is gold.
Right? It stood the test of time. And that peace of mind can be priceless for a lot of people, especially when it comes to their retirement savings.
For sure. But let's get back to those practical advantages for a sec. Because the tax-deferred growth in a gold IRA is nothing to sneeze at. It can make a huge difference in your long-term planning.
Absolutely. And as you said before, gold has this history of performing well when the stock market takes a dip. It's like a safety net woven from precious metal.
I like that analogy.
But okay, let's be real here. Gold IRA Blueprint isn't just singing the praises of gold. They're also laying out some potential downsides.
Right. No investment is perfect. It's all about weighing the pros and cons.
Exactly. And one of the downsides that really jumped out at me was the limited investment options.
Yeah. You're pretty much putting all your eggs in one basket, even if it is a shiny basket.
Exactly. It's a lot of faith to put in one asset, even if it is gold.
And that's where diversification comes in. That's a crucial part of any investment strategy. And with a gold IRA, you're mainly focused on precious metals, gold, silver, platinum, palladium, which can be great in certain market conditions, but it might also mean missing out on growth opportunities in other areas of the market.
Exactly. And that's a risk you have to be comfortable with. If you're going all in on gold, you're basically betting on gold and only gold.
It's a specialized investment for sure. And speaking of things to consider, there's also the fees involved with gold IRAs.
Ooh, yeah. That's where I started to get a little nervous. Gold IRA Blueprint mentions custodian fees, storage fees, even setup fees. It felt like all those little costs could really start to eat away at your returns.
That's a valid concern. And it's definitely something to factor into your decision-making process. You're right that those fees can add up, so you want to be sure you're getting a good value for what you're paying.
Exactly. Speaking of things that make you nervous, how about this no FDIC insurance?
Oh, that sounds a little scary.
Right. So if something happens to the company holding your gold, are you just out of luck?
Well, that's a key difference between gold IRAs and traditional bank accounts. Gold IRAs are regulated, but not in the same way, so there isn't that same level of protection.
So it's a risk to be aware of for sure.
Definitely. That's why choosing a reputable and trustworthy custodian is absolutely crucial. You need to do your research, look at their track record, their history, their security measures, their transparency. Everything matters when you're entrusting your hard-earned savings to someone else.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's not just about finding the cheapest option. It's about finding a custodian you can really trust.
Exactly. And speaking of things to think about, Gold IRA Blueprint emphasizes the importance of diversification even within your gold IRA.
So you're saying don't put all your golden eggs in one basket.
Exactly. Even within the world of precious metals, you want to spread the risk.
So what does that look like in practice?
Well, for example, you wouldn't want to invest solely in one type of gold coin. You'd want to diversify across different types of coins, bars, maybe even bullion to create a more balanced and resilient portfolio within your gold IRA.
Interesting. So even within a gold IRA, you can have a mini portfolio of sorts.
Exactly. It's all about managing risk and maximizing potential.
Got it. And speaking of risk, Gold IRA Blueprint really emphasizes the importance of understanding market trends.
Right, because gold prices don't just magically go up forever.
They don't.
Nope. They're influenced by all sorts of market forces, just like any other asset.
So what are some of the factors that can influence gold prices? Like what should people be keeping an eye on if they're considering a gold IRA?
Well, there are a few key things to watch for. Well, global economic conditions play a big role. When there's a lot of uncertainty in the market, investors tend to flock to gold as a safe haven asset.
I see. So like a flight to safety.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that increased demand naturally drives up the price. Makes sense, right?
Yeah, it's like gold becomes this financial security blanket.
That's a good way to put it. And it's not just about tracking the price of gold itself.
What do you mean?
I mean, you got to look at the bigger picture, the global economic trends, and how those can impact gold prices.
So it's about understanding those underlying currents that are moving the market.
Exactly. And speaking of economic factors, inflation is another big one.
Oh, yeah. How does that play into it?
Well, gold is often seen as a hedge against inflation because its value tends to rise as the purchasing power of paper currency declines.
So in other words, when everything else gets more expensive, gold kind of holds its value.
Exactly. It helps to preserve your wealth in times of rising inflation.
That reminds me of that old saying, gold is money, everything else is credit.
Yeah, that one, it really highlights gold's enduring value throughout history.
Definitely. A lot of people see it as a safe bet, especially when the economy is uncertain.
For sure. So we've got economic conditions, inflation. What else?
What other factors can impact gold prices?
Well, geopolitical events can also play a role. Think wars, political instability, trade tensions, that kind of stuff.
So basically anything that creates uncertainty in the market.
Exactly. And as we discussed before, uncertainty tends to make people want to hold on to gold.
It's like gold is this barometer of global stability.
You could say that the price often reflects the anxieties and uncertainties of the world.
That's pretty interesting. So we're keeping an eye on the global economy, inflation, geopolitical events. What else?
Supply and demand, of course.
Oh, right. Gold is a finite resource.
Exactly. And new discoveries are getting rarer and rarer.
Makes you wonder if there will ever be another gold rush in our lifetime.
Who knows? Maybe with new technologies and exploration methods. But even without a major new discovery, the limited supply of gold coupled with rising global demand is likely to keep supporting its value.
So it's a balancing act between what's available and what people want.
Exactly. And that balance is always in flux, makes gold a pretty dynamic asset.
Dynamic and potentially lucrative if you play your cards right.
That's the hope, at least. But so far, we've mainly focused on things that can push gold prices up. What about the flip side? What can cause gold prices to drop?
I'm curious about that too. What can bring the price of gold down?
Well, a strengthening U.S. dollar can sometimes put downward pressure on gold prices
Why is that?
because gold is priced in U.S. dollars. So when the dollar gets stronger, it takes fewer dollars to buy the same amount of gold, essentially making it less expensive.
I see. So a strong dollar can actually weaken gold.
In a way, yes, it's all interconnected. And then there's interest rate hikes to consider.
How do those affect gold?
When interest rates rise, investors often shift their money from gold to interest-bearing assets like bonds.
Because they can get a better return that way.
Exactly. So that shift can lead to a decrease in demand for gold, which can then put downward pressure on prices.
So it's all about following the money.
Pretty much. Investors are always looking for the best returns, and sometimes those returns are in gold and sometimes they're elsewhere.
Makes sense. It sounds like understanding these market dynamics is super important for anyone thinking about a gold IRA.
Absolutely. You need to be aware of the forces that can influence gold prices, both the positive and the negative.
And speaking of important things, Gold IRA Blueprint talks a lot about having an exit strategy, especially with an asset like gold.
Yeah. You got to think about what happens when you actually need to use that money in retirement. How do you turn that gold back into spendable cash?
Good point. It's not just about buying and holding. You need a plan for liquidating your gold assets.
Exactly. And that involves understanding the process, the potential costs, and any tax implications.
So you don't run into any surprises down the road.
Exactly. It's much better to have a plan in place well in advance rather than scrambling to figure it out when you need the money.
That's wise advice. Plan ahead, right?
Always.
Yeah.
Especially when it comes to your retirement savings.
So what are some of the things people should be thinking about when it comes to their gold liquidation plan?
Well, the first thing is to understand how gold is actually sold.
All right, you can't just walk into any store and cash it in, right?
Not exactly. You'll likely need to work with a reputable dealer or a precious metals broker to sell your holdings.
So finding the right broker is important.
Very important. And just like with any other type of broker, you want to shop around and compare their fees and commission structures.
Make sure you're getting a good deal.
Exactly. And then you've got the tax implications to think about.
Ah, yes, taxes.
Oh.
Always got to think about taxes.
Unfortunately, yes. Profits from selling gold held in a traditional IRA are usually taxed as ordinary income.
So that's something to keep in mind.
Definitely. And it gets even more complicated with Roth IRAs. The rules are different there, so it's essential to understand the tax implications of your specific type of IRA.
So it's not a one-size-fits-all situation when it comes to taxes.
Nope, you got to know the rules of the game.
Got it. So we've talked about finding a broker, understanding the tax implications. What else should people consider when crafting their gold liquidation plan?
Well, thinking about the timing of your sale is important too. Remember, gold prices fluctuate, so you want to try to sell when prices are favorable.
So it's about timing the market to maximize your returns.
Exactly. You want to capitalize on those price swings as much as possible.
That makes sense. But it sounds like it can get pretty complicated trying to keep track of all these factors.
It definitely can be, which is why Gold IRA Blueprint has this awesome resource that can really help.
You mean that checklist we talked about earlier?
Yes. It's available at goldirablueprint.com/exclusive. And it covers everything you need to know about choosing the right Gold IRA company. From fees to custodian selection to diversification strategies, it's super helpful.
That sounds like a great resource for anyone who's new to the world of gold IRAs.
It really is. It takes all the complexity out of the equation and presents the information in a clear, concise way. It's like a roadmap to guide you through the whole process.
Sounds like a must-have.
I'd say so,
Right.
especially if you're serious about considering a gold IRA. It can save you a lot of time, money, and headaches down the road.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here. Let's recap the key takeaways from Gold IRA Blueprint. What are the big things people should remember when thinking about a gold IRA for retirement?
Okay, so first and foremost, understand that gold IRAs aren't a magic solution. They can offer diversification benefits, tax advantages, and a sense of security, but they also come with higher fees, limited investment options, and the risk of fraud.
Right. It's not all sunshine and rainbows.
Exactly.
Right.
You got to weigh the pros and cons carefully and decide if a gold IRA really aligns with your risk tolerance, your retirement goals, and your overall investment strategy. It's all about knowing what you're getting into and making sure it's the right fit for you.
Exactly. It's not a decision to make lightly.
Definitely not. You really need to do your homework.
Yeah, like what kind of homework are we talking about here?
Well, for starters, thoroughly research potential custodians, compare their fees, their track records, make sure they're legit.
Ah, yeah. That custodian thing seems like a big deal.
It is. You're entrusting them with your retirement savings. So you want to be sure they're trustworthy and have a solid history.
So don't just go with the first one you find.
Nope. Shop around, ask questions. Don't be afraid to get into the nitty-gritty.
Okay, so we're talking about fees, track records. What else should people look for in a custodian?
Transparency security measures. You want to see how they handle your gold and what kind of protections they have in place.
Makes sense. It's your money after all.
Yeah.
You want to know it's safe.
Absolutely. It's all about finding a custodian you can really trust and feel comfortable with.
Like a true partner.
Exactly. And speaking of partners, Gold IRA Blueprint also recommends diversifying within your Gold IRA.
Yeah, we touched on that earlier, but I'd love to hear more about what that looks like in practice.
Sure. So just like you wouldn't put all your money into one stock, you wouldn't want to put all your gold into just one type of coin or bar.
I see. So spread the risk.
Exactly. Diversify across different types of coins, bars, bullion, just like you would with any other investment portfolio.
So even within a gold IRA, you can build a diversified mini portfolio.
You got it. It's about creating a balanced and resilient portfolio that can weather the market's ups and downs.
And speaking of ups and downs, don't forget about those market trends. We talked about how gold prices are influenced by all sorts of factors.
Right? The global economy, inflation, geopolitical events, it's all connected.
So it's not a set it and forget it kind of
Yeah,
investment.
you gotta stay informed and keep an eye on those market movements.
Because gold can go down as well as up.
Exactly. It's not immune to fluctuations.
Makes sense. And of course, there's that whole exit strategy thing we talked about.
Yeah, super important. Got to have a plan for liquidating your gold assets when you need them.
Turn that gold back into cash.
Exactly. Figure out the process, the costs, the tax implications, all that good stuff well in advance.
So you're not scrambling at the last minute.
Right, because when you need that money, you need it.
Yeah,
So it's best to be prepared.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, so to wrap things up, it sounds like gold IRAs can be a valuable part of a retirement portfolio.
They definitely can be, but it's not a decision to make lightly.
There's a lot to consider,
For sure, the fees, the custodians, the market trends, it can feel overwhelming.
but that's where that checklist from Gold IRA Blueprint comes in.
Right, that's your secret weapon. It breaks it all down into easy-to-understand steps and helps you make smart, informed decisions.
So head over to goldirblueprint.com/exclusive and grab that checklist, folks.
It's free, and it could save you a lot of hassle down the road.
And remember, knowledge is power, especially when it comes to your retirement savings.
Exactly. The more you know, the better equipped you'll be to make the best choices for your financial future.
So keep learning, keep exploring, and keep striving for that secure and fulfilling retirement.
Hear, hear. 2 happy retirements.
Absolutely, to happy retirements. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive. We'll see you next